Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well, as well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Now, this is a first solo that I have done for ages, and at the time of recording, I've just come back to work from 7 weeks away in France and a week in Sydney. Yeah, it's tough to be me. I truly believe that I'd find it really difficult to come back to work, but it hasn't been. In fact, my feelings when I first walked back into the office were excitement and happiness. It felt really good to be able to walk back into my office and not feel that dread that I used to feel in my old job. So I posted a couple of short stories about this on Instagram, and I had a lot of feedback. Now, a number of women asked me how I went about leaving my job. Some told me that they feel that dread every day and they got what I meant. And many of them said that they wish that they could leave their job and feel like I did about their work. So I wanted just to explore this a bit more. This episode is going to cover a few topics that women often keep to themselves. Now, sometimes we do it because it's out of necessity. Sometimes it's because there's no one else you've got to talk to, or you could feel that you're going to be misunderstood or dismissed. And sometimes it's because it feels safer to just ignore it. Now, some of the things I'm going to talk about today as well are going to land for listeners, and for others it won't. And it could even be triggering for a few people. But through my own personal experience, which no one can take away from me, and the experiences of the incredible women I mentor, I've got lots of other examples there, I know just how important it is to hear that we aren't the only ones. And I also think it's always good to stretch your own personal perspective. This is at the heart of what redefining your midlife means. So I decided to do this solo episode to give you an insight into the steps that I took, basically my path from the past to my life now. I want to reassure you that it wasn't a direct or an easy path, and it did take me some time. Now, my Instagram story mentioned that when I was working in my old job as a teacher, for many years I had this, like a horrible sinking feeling when the holidays were going to be coming to an end, particularly those big summer holidays. For me, it meant that at least for a week or two before coming back to work, the same things always happened. I'd start having dreams about school. They'd haunt me at night. I'd complete the same mandatory trainings that we had to do again. I'd start researching my new students. I'd start planning adjustments to cater for all of their diverse needs. And then I'd head into school to set up the classroom before the pupil-free days even began. It was Groundhog Day over and over again, year after year. It was that 100% knowing of what I was going back to. And sadly, for me, after so many years, it just filled me with dread and negativity. So coming back to work now, all excited after a big break, really felt like a novelty. It was a totally new and different experience for me. And to realize that I'm the one that created this, something that I absolutely love to return to, is pretty damn special. I also said in those Instagram stories that it took a lot of courage for me to leave my old job. Now, keep in mind, this was a job that I was in love with for many, many years, until I wasn't. And I was a teacher for over 3 decades, and that became a huge part of my identity. It was a job I took very seriously, but teaching is something that absolutely consumes you, both in time and headspace. It was also a job that had changed and morphed so much over those decades, it was no longer aligning with my beliefs of education. I still really loved being there with the kids, but I didn't like that system that I had to work in. And term after term, semester after semester, and year after year, that really started to take a toll on me. At the same time, there were a lot of other things going on in my life. And that's, these things are unavoidable at this stage. So what was going on at the same time was that my children had finished school and they'd left home. So my role as a mum had changed significantly. It left a really big hole that I needed to fill. And I know a lot of mums feel like that when their kids leave home. My dad had also passed away a few years earlier, and my mum for a number of years was really unwell and slowly dying. So I was also processing all of that grief. And then when you throw in the hormonal ups and downs of perimenopause, the timing of everything together created that perfect storm. I had very little left in the tank, and it all came to a head at the end of a mid-year break. It happened when I opened my work emails on the Sunday night before returning back. And in one of those emails that I read, it was something that I disagreed with wholeheartedly, and it was a straw that finally broke the camel's back. Now, I don't know if you've read the moment on the bathroom floor scene from that book, Eat, Pray, Love, but this was my bathroom floor moment. This was me. I was curled up in a ball on the sofa, sobbing absolutely uncontrollably. It was that true, ugly, red-faced, snotty, out-of-control cry. It scared the absolute bejesus out of me, and it must have scared my husband. Right then, I knew I had to make a decision. So I could either harden up and keep on forging ahead, or I could make that decision to leave a job that I'd had for 32 years. In the end, it wasn't a hard choice. So I took some sick leave from work so that I can have some time with my mum and have time to work on myself and get myself right. So combined with that whole grief of seeing my mum so unwell and passing away, I also had some time to process a lot of hard questions that I'd been avoiding for a long time. And I've just jotted down some of these questions so I can talk them through with you. You might like to do the same. So I asked myself, how do I want the next half of my life to look? What can I do to change the things that I'm not happy with? What do I really want to do for the next 3 to 4 decades? How do I want to feel and be when I'm 80? And what are my next steps going to be? They're really big questions, but you know what? They're not new, because I also have a quote from Confucius that happened way back from the 6th century BC. And even back then, they were dealing with these big moral dilemmas. And he says, we've got 2 lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one. Now, when you spend your whole life being unsatisfied year after year, it wears you down. And for many women, when they get to their 40s and 50s, so many of us realize suddenly that half of your life's gone. There comes a dawning that you've been so busy that you haven't even had the chance to think about your second half of life. Now, I know I'm not alone. I knew a lot of women who felt this way because I was having conversations with other women at that time. It wasn't, and it isn't, unique to me. I also read The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bonnie Ware. Now, this book reflects on her time when she was working in palliative care, and it really struck a chord with me. These are the top 5 regrets of the dying patients that she cared for. The first one is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. Ooh, that one hit hard. The next one was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And the final regret was, I wish I'd let myself be happier. I felt if I didn't change a number of things in my life, then it was more than likely I was going to hit 4 of those 5 regrets. So I came to that whole realization that nothing, absolutely nothing is going to change unless I did. That was the only thing that I could control. I had to accept responsibility for myself. So for me, it meant no more blaming, no more complaining or making excuses. And it was also a matter of, if not now, when? For me, this wasn't a process that happened overnight. I had no one to guide me as I was going through all of this. So it was really a slow burn. I had to find out some me time and carve out that time to think ahead about what I might like to do now and into the future. Because when you're in the thick of all of this soup, you're caught up in the busyness of motherhood, of family life, of your marriage, of work, your friends, your life is bloody busy. You don't have a lot of time to think about what you might like for yourself. So the first step for me was to make that time and ask myself those big life questions. I had to look at my values and whether they matched my actions, because in truth, some of them didn't. What I said was important and what I was actually doing were two different things. So I had to look at all of those important areas of my life, and I gave an honest answer into what was working and what wasn't. It was also during this time that I decided how to learn to meditate. And it was through the practice of Vedic meditation, which is my form of meditation, that was without doubt the biggest game changer for me. Because in this practice, you meditate for 20 minutes twice a day. For the first time in I don't know how long, I was able to sit with and process my thoughts in silence without that noise from the outside. I became less stressed, I got more aware, and then I was really guided by my intuition, my gut feelings. It allowed me to get honest with myself. It helped me to work out exactly what I wanted and what I didn't want. And at the same time, I started to do a lot of work on self-development. Now, I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning. I've got a growth mindset as well, so I know that there's always that next step to be better. So I devoured books, I went to workshops, I took courses, I did things in neuropsychology and in neuroscience. I did the hard work and I started to apply what I learned. I knew that my mindset was key from everything that I learned. So I had to change a lot of those thoughts that had been going unnoticed because they weren't going to help my future self. And this is what I learned from the experts and what I support other women to unravel. That you get that realization from what we know in neuroscience, that your life today is based largely on your past. From the past from your 20s and 30s, so decades ago. You still keep those old thoughts and beliefs, your past circumstances, the past visions, your past hopes for what you want your future to be. So your future relies on creating a new vision, but you can't do that when you're keeping everything from your past. So what you have to do is almost like upgrading the software in your brain. You've got to create that new vision that includes new thoughts, new beliefs, and new actions to match that life that you want in the future. In my studies, I learned that the majority of people don't notice or even question their thoughts. And so they believe that their thoughts are facts. But just because you think it doesn't make it true. Just because you tell yourself something 1,000 times a day doesn't make it true. And over time, years and decades, all of those thoughts can turn into self-limiting beliefs. You tell yourself that things can't change, or you don't have time, or it's too hard to do, or it's not going to work, or that everything's going to fall apart if you leave. I worked on getting clear on what I wanted to have in my future. Now, for many people, this really rubs them up the wrong way because it can sound really self-indulgent. But I can tell you what, if you're continually unhappy, you can become a really resentful person. And that spills over into all other areas and aspects of your life. And without doubt, it will affect the relationships with those you love the most. It'll affect the relationships with your children, your husband, your close family members, your close friends, your job, your colleagues. So if you don't start pouring into yourself, you can't give to others like you would want to. All of this was really uncomfortable for me. It's not easy. It's not easy to do. It's hard work. But I began to see things differently rather than wearing those blinkers. And I also knew I wasn't looking after myself like I should be. My self-care was pretty hit and miss. And to be honest, a lot of the times it was pretty shitty. I realized I also ended up being a martyr. And as women, it's easy to get caught up with putting everyone else first. Your children first, your partner first, your friends, your family, your work, your colleagues, making sure everybody else's needs are met and yours comes last. And when you do that for years, it takes its toll. And for me, it did. And now that I was going through perimenopause, My body was letting me know loud and clear that certain things needed to be improved if I wanted to live a long and healthy life. And once again, it was up to me to take that personal responsibility and to do something about it. No excuses, no blaming, no complaining. I just had to begin. I asked myself how I wanted to feel and what I wanted to do when I'm in my 80s. That was one of those big questions earlier in the episode. Now that was my guiding star. I worked backwards from there and I learned all I could about the wellness pillars, which all reputable women's health experts promoted. And it's exactly what you hear them say on this podcast. So I chose my goals. I broke them down into small, easy steps so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. I changed, I added, and I improved elements of the 6 wellness pillars, and I came up with my very own wellness recipe that suited my body and my lifestyle. So, for example, for me, I improved my nutrition and my sleep hygiene. I moved my body more. I began to exercise more and have probably more exercise like yoga, and I included strength training for sure. I was serious about reducing and learning to manage my stress because I'd had so much of it of late. And there were so many things I had complete control over. And now, when I think about it, all I need to do is just adjust it when I need to. So when I was away on holidays, my normal routine was out of whack. But when I got back to Australia and back into my normal life, it was easy. I just slightly adjusted some of the things and I'm back into a routine to help me get back to where I was before I went away. Just doing these things made me feel so much better inside and out. And I knew after what I experienced that I wanted to help support women like me at this stage of life. So this was a fundamental part on what I chose to do next. At the age of 54, I was at a point where I was ready to leave my job permanently. That was huge. I was ready to step into the complete unknown. That was scary. And create a business that focuses on supporting, teaching, and guiding women in this stage of life. That's really fulfilling. When I left my job, I had a vague idea of what I wanted to do, but I had no idea about how I would do it. And to be completely honest, that was confronting and scary after being a leader in my profession for so many years. I took lots of shaky steps forward. I continued with my studies. I found amazing mentors, and that was key to help guide and teach me. And I surrounded myself with a community of like-minded women who I knew were going to support me. And then slowly but surely, I started creating and designing my new life. But I had the added pressure of putting myself out there and doing it on social media. Not always advisable. Sometimes doing these things you want to do in private. So to do it in public on social media really is that next step. That accelerated the growth well and truly. I'm proud that I'm taking brave steps forward, knowing what I'm doing matters, that what I'm doing is going to help other women to live a happier life that's true to them, to live a life with improved health, a life that's happier, and a future that's designed and aligned to their values and what's important to them. So now when I come into my office, I'm in my element. It's so different to walking into the classroom where I'd lost that drive. Now I'm supporting women to achieve their health and wellness goals through my Better Than Before monthly membership. I'm working one-to-one with some incredible women in my private mentoring containers, and I'm supporting them as they start taking these big steps to change their lives. As difficult as what I went through was, experiencing and working through my own big life events, it's really helped me to grow as a person. I've become the mentor I wish I had a few years ago when I started going through it all. In my office space, I can also create these podcast episodes where I'm able to bring on some incredible women who are redefining their middle of life, showing you that there are so many different ways that we can live our lives. And I'm also interviewing the most incredible health and wellness experts. I pinch myself that I'm talking to some of the top people in their field, in the world, and that I can bring that information to other women so that they can learn more and improve their health outcomes. My office space is also where I created my quiz and free information pack about perimenopause that thousands of women access. And in my office, I also create the content that I share at speaking events and at workshops. It's no wonder I love coming into my office. Now, on a side note, if you want any more information on the quiz or my Better Than Before monthly membership or my bespoke mentoring programs, head to my website, joclarkcoaching.com, or go to the show notes for that direct link. And also, I offer a free 20-minute connection call for women who want to discuss different mentoring options. And you'll find that on my website as well. Now, before I wrap up, I just want to say that I love knowing that in the next 12 months, there's going to be so many more amazing things that are going to unfold. I've got so much energy and I've got so much vision to do more. And I know that I can feel like this and do this. And at the age of 55, I reckon that's freaking amazing. It certainly wasn't like anything I was expecting when I turned 50, completely different. This is my personal story. Your story is going to be completely different. But the point is, no matter what comes your way, just remember that you are the author and you get to write your life story. And I know that's exciting and scary and daunting all at the same time. My advice is don't be scared to take those small steps to create the life that you truly deserve. There is so much more to your life. Now, as I said at the start, this episode was quite different and it covered big topics that sometimes you don't get to share with other people. So maybe just by listening to this, something might have shifted for you. And if that's the case, let me know, because I love getting DMs and emails from listeners. They really make my day. Now, I've got lots of great episodes coming up featuring more incredible women who are redefining their midlife. So make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe. And I'd love it if you can share those episodes that you will make a difference to somebody that you would care about. Have a great one, everybody. Bye. Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. To keep spreading these empowering messages, please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.